joining me. So we've stripped this chair. I've taken off everything that needs to be taken off. We're going to leave the rest of the stuff on because it's still good and we can reuse it. And so we're going to start with upholstering the outside back of this chair. We're going to do that from the inside as it's an exposed back chair. So you can see the exposed wood in the back, and then you'll also be able to see the fabric going through. And we're going to do a polka dot pattern and it's going to look great. So I can't wait to get started. Thanks so much for joining me. Here is a shot of all of the tools and supplies that I will need this project. I'll put a list in the description of this video if you'd like to take a look at that, and I'll just list all the stuff that I need, and so that I don't need to go through it here, and I can keep this short and sweet. So in following what the previous upholster has done, we are going to be using these pieces that we took off from the back of the chair, and I'm just arranging them on our backing fabric, which is the polka dot fabric, in the relatively the same shape that the previous upholster used. You can do a full piece instead of cutting them into pieces like this, but I've decided just to follow the way that the previous upholster has done. And I also have a second step after this, which is applying the muslin, which is one piece, and some tacking strip, just to give it a little bit of extra strength when we apply the tufting buttons. So don't forget to make sure to iron each piece. It's nice to have it nice and flat, because when it goes on, you don't want to see any wrinkles in the back of the chair. I still do try to pattern match, even though they're polka dots. There is still a pattern that I want to try to follow in the back of the chair to make sure that the polka dots are actually following the straight line that they're supposed to. So once I get started, then I'll definitely make sure that all of the lines are still going straight. And as I'm stapling here, I'm making sure to pull it pretty tight. I don't want there to be gaps as it's a curved surface. But I'm also keeping in mind to not put the staples too close together. Like I said when we were stripping the chair in the previous video of when I stripped the chair, it's nice to leave a little bit of space for the next upholster to be able to wedge their tool in there. So this first part's done. You can see the lines in the polka dots are all kind of going the same diagonal way, and so this part is now all done. Next, what I did was I cut a piece of muslin and also stapled it over top of the polka dot fabric, and I used the cardboard tacking strips to tack it all down. And what this does is it just gives a little bit of extra strength when I am punching my tufting needle through the foam, through this muslin fabric, and then through our regular fabric in order to attach the buttons. It just gives it a little bit of extra strength and keeps it nice. I had filmed the whole process and it was really cool, and then I deleted all of that footage because I'm so smart, and I wanted to clear my little micro drive to keep all my files organized, but I ended up like deleting all my prep work, so I'm just going to talk about it instead, and I apologize for that. Next video I do on another chair, I'll make sure to make a video of how I do all of the nice prep work because it's visually pleasing. The next step I did was the base, and this isn't the cushion, this is just the polka dot base, and I unfortunately deleted this footage too. I just wanted to show you this picture of the small pleat that I done. When you're going around a curved surface, it's nice to just make it like a nice pleat at the corners, just so that when the fabric bunches, you're flowing it into a nice pleat pattern and it doesn't get all bunched up. And all of that base where you can see my staples, I'm going to be putting the bottom bias tape with some decorative tacks, so that'll like complete it and make it look really nice, and that will be at the end of the video. Unfortunately I wasn't able to show this process, but again, I'll make another video when I do another base, and then we'll be able to like show it in the future. Plus I've got lots more fun things to show you, so we'll move on. Next step was a layer of batting, which I applied to the inside back rest and also the arm rests on the inside. And this is just to cover the piece of foam that we have reused from the chair, and also to give it just a little bit more padding as you know, the foam kind of gets depleted after years of use, but as it was still in decent quality, we have just given it a recover here with a layer of batting on the backrest and the armrest. Here's a little short video just to make up for all of the footage that I just erased on all this work that we just did on the chair. This is just to show that we just did the base polka dot fabric. We also did the polka dot backing, and we also did the inside back prep work for the chair, which is the muslin with cardboard tacking, the foam, and then the batting layer on the arms and the back. And so now we're ready to move into the next step, which is laying out the pattern for our tufting buttons. Okay, so now that this is all prepped, first thing we're going to do today is take some measurements for the button placement, and once I have those in place, then we're going to put and cut out our pieces for the upholstery, and what I'm going to have to do is sew the arms on as well. So they're going to be the same upholstery, just attached, and I'm going to match up the pattern so that it will continue out this way. And we also need to make a box cushion, and so that will be one of our steps. Maybe not today, but we'll get that box cushion sewn on there. And now that we have all the buttons made, we can go ahead and start working on getting the main stuff on the chair. And then we will have still to upholster the side right here and both sides, and then also the decorative tacking will be one of our last steps, which is just fine detailing, and then we'll be ready to showcase the chair. It'll be all done. Thanks for hanging out with me. On to the placement of the tufting buttons. Figuring out where the center point of the chair is pretty much the first step, because you want to know where the center is so that you can start there and start mapping out from side to side, making measurements, figuring out how big you want your diamonds to be, and how to measure everything. As I was figuring this out, I realized that part of the chair is a little off-center. So as I'm showing you here, I'm trying to make the marks and have everything match up, and I've drawn a couple different lines because I've realized that something wasn't working and I needed to stop and reassess my situation and figure out what was going on. Okay, so I had to pause that because I had to figure this out a little bit. So it looks like this chair is a little crooked in the frame. So initially I was having a hard time drawing my lines because nothing was matching up, because the center that I had got wasn't working out with the sides. So I had to start over and redo everything. Okay, so what I did was I figured out where the center was just by making some marks at the front. So from the front here, I have this piece of fabric here just to protect the base, and so I'm using that as a guide. So from the center all the way back, and then all the way up to the center of that, so that I could get a center line. Once I had a center line, then I made a couple more lines. So I leveled these across to make this equal, because this side is like shifted a little bit, so it's changing my measurements. So once I had 2 lines coming across here, then I could figure out where I'm going to have my cut line, which is where I'm going to sew the side piece on. So I have that ready to go. And once I had my center, then I could start taking measurements. So I figured out where my half point was, and from my half point I have pyramids or diamonds that are like 6.5 inches. So from here, this is 6.5, from here this is 6.5, and these are hugely helpful, because once I have one running across here, so I can figure out where my center line is, and then I can figure out from here to here what that line's gonna be. So from there, that's good. And then once I'm in here, then I can be, you know, figure out where my 6 point is, put my points there. Same here, and here, and then I can work it all out from there. So we got it done, and it's ready to go. So now I'm going to cut the upholstery, and we'll see if we can get the buttons on, and well, actually I'll have to sew it first. So we'll just slow down. At least we got it all marked out, and that's ready to go. So we're gonna figure out where we want the placement of our fabric to be on the chair. It really helps to have the previous piece that we took off as a template, just to kind of like look at where we want to have our buttons, to have it like visually pleasing, because you know, sometimes if the design is too far up, or it's not centered, or I kind of like the main part to be slightly lower than middle, which is how I placed this one. And then also you want it to work if you've got buttons, where you want to have your buttons on the fabric. You know, I like to have it in specific points that work well with the fabric. So it takes a little bit of like playing around with it, figuring out where the buttons are going to go, and then once I have a general idea of where my like center point is going to be, then we can cut the fabric and I know what I'm doing. So that's kind of where I figured it out, where I want to have it, and then we can cut the fabric. So I definitely leave a lot of excess fabric on the side, just to make sure that we have enough to go around the chair, and then we can cut the rest off later. So be a little generous. I think I left like 3 inches. You never know how deep your buttons are going to go as well. These ones are very shallow. They're not deep tufting buttons. So we're not going to be losing fabric mileage when we pull each button in very much. We lose a little bit, but not a lot that will like pull the fabric all the way in, so that you won't have enough to staple it at the side. So you got to take into account, if you have deep button tufting, then when you take your measurements, you put your tape measure all the way in how deep you want to have that button, and then you measure all the way out to the outside, and that's how much extra you leave. And then you also have to calculate depending on how many buttons. We have 16 buttons on the front of this chair, and they are very shallow, so we don't have to add too much extra fabric to account for that. So I decided to place one of the main designs on each of the side arms, and because the pattern changes direction, it can't be exactly matched up, but we want to try to still get the backrest symmetrical enough and the 2 sides the same, so that it looks the same on both sides. So symmetry is really important when you're dealing with patterns like this, and being pretty exact about placement. Also, if you're pre-sewing onto a back piece like this, it takes a little bit of figuring out. I realized that I wasn't going to be able to use my sewn piece, but this is the process, so I left it in here in the video to show that sometimes you just have to kind of like work things out as you go, and it might not be from the same as your original plan that you have initially. So initially I sewed the arms on here, and they were placed in a pretty good position, but it started pulling in some weird places, so I decided that it wasn't going to completely work. So I'll show you what happened here in just a moment. Things we're going to need here is some different size tufting needles, some really good bonded and waxed tufting thread. I have some rolled cotton to use as temporary stays, and some buttons and some snips. I actually really love tufting. I think it's a lot of fun and a lot of upholsterers are like, oh, tufting's the worst job ever, and possibly it's because you have to pull the buttons so tight and it's tough on your hands, but I find it a lot of fun and everything looks so good when it's super plushy. So I don't have a problem doing these at all. I think it's great. So I started here. I chose to start at the top. There's a lot of different variations on who likes to start where with what, but top middle is, I think, the best place, and then I went one down into the middle. So once I have my mid set, then I can span out to each side, and so definitely I want to do like the top of the next side first, and then the top of the other side after that. So I keep going back and forth, because if you're pulling fabric each direction, then you want it to be even. If I did all of the left buttons first, then I might be pulling all of the fabric to the left, and it would look super weird when I try to then pull it all to the right. So you want to be able to like spread it out evenly and have the distribution of fabric, so you don't have bunches and stuff. These are pretty shallow, so it makes it pretty easy, although I am working with a curved surface as well, and when you're trying to smooth something over a curved surface, if you don't make relief cuts, it's not going to smooth out very good. And I'm not sure if you can see at the side there, but I had made some relief cuts in the fabric, and when I see that something is bunching in a weird place, I will make a few more relief cuts. Make sure not cut your relief cuts too deep, because then you could be getting into the part where you actually need to be stapling that fabric, and if you cut the relief cut, then you're going to have gaps in your fabric and it's going to look terrible. So just make small snips and relieve things just to the minimum amount that you possibly need to. So you can't see it from here. Once I turn the chair around, you'll see the back where all the tufting thread's coming out through the polka dot fabric. I have polka dot buttons for that, but in the meantime, I've made some cotton stays, which are just small pieces of cotton that I've rolled kind of into a tube that I use to put my slip knot around for my buttons so that I can pull it tight and I can see how the front is going to sit with the buttons, and I can get the tension proper. And that's just temporary because I'll have to go through and fine-tune all those buttons when I put the polka dot ones on. I'm not ready to do that yet because I want to make sure that all of the fabric is going to sit nice before I go in and finalize all of the rest of the buttons. Sometimes things shift, or one's too tight or whatever, and I don't want to have to go and cut the tufting thread and redo that button. So I just do it temporarily until I get everything else set. Then I come back and do all the finishing and tightening and making everything beautiful and perfect. Starting to put a couple placement staples in a few spots just to hold the fabric and see where it's going to sit. And I'm playing around with the side arms because I'm noticing I've got some bunching happening, which I'm not completely happy about based on where it was sewn. And it's because it's really hard to tell how it's going to sit once all the buttons are in there. I'm now coming to see that it's not going to sit as perfectly as I'd like. So I think a little bit after this time I end up taking out my sewing so that I can reposition the fabric. Here's a little glimpse, close-up of how the buttons are looking, and I've been able to kind of match some of the buttons to the fabric, which looks really cool. It's hard to tell from far away, it's way easier to see them close up, but when you see it in person then you can see all the buttons and it looks really cool. Go rolling with the punches. I had to take my sewing out because it just wasn't sitting the way I wanted it to. It kept it needed to be adjusted. So I took out my stitching and I'm just gonna hand sew it because that's completely doable, and it takes a little bit longer and it's a little bit more work, but it's totally worth it having everything sit right and perfect. Everything is a work in progress. You get better at doing things, and on the next chair I'll get better at figuring out how to actually sew the fabric on right away. I'll learn more techniques and tricks, and every chair is different. It kind of like tells you different things, and you kind of just need to like read it and not be mad if you have to take something apart and redo it. It's the way it is. You just gotta suck it up. And I'm so happy with how it actually turned out after, because everything is like bang on, eye-catching and equal, symmetrical, and awesome. Overview of the work that we've done already. So we got the side arms on, sewed them in, they're nice and straight and looking really good, and we got all the buttons on, and we haven't stapled everything in yet, and the buttons still need to be tightened in the back, but they're all in place, and it's really symmetrical. It looks really good. So what we got to do is just cut all of the side stuff off, do the side fabric as well, the outside side that's getting polka dots, and then we also need to just apply the buttons and tie them and knot them so they stay put. I just use those little cotton pieces as temporary stays, and then just tightened up the button around that just so I could, temporarily put them in place. So now we'll go and put all the buttons on and finish all the stapling and get all the backrest completely 100%. We're gonna power through getting the rest of these polka dot buttons on, And if you want to see the process on how I make these custom cover buttons, you can check out the video Upholstery Projects by illdebri custom cover button tutorial. And I'll show you how I make these all by hand. I don't have a button press, so I just use the small plastic piece and a little bit of glue, and they're amazing, and they'll never come apart because they're super strong. So check that out. Oh man, if you guys are still with me, I give you mad props for hanging out with me this whole video. And I'm glad I'm not alone. So this last part in just like the main upholstery is doing the outside backs. And so the foam was still good in this respect as well. So I just threw a layer of batting over top of it just to plush it up a bit and give it a nice clean base to put the fabric on. And then we just throw the and these are really easy. We just throw the fabric on, nice square piece, super easy. I still look at the pattern to make sure that the polka dots are, you know, kind of going in the right direction. And that's pretty much most of the upholstery stuff. So that will be it for this video. The next videos are the finishing details. So what I'm going to do is some decorative tacks around the whole chair, around those outside back square side panels there. We're going to do some decorative brass tacks with some black velvet trim. It's going to look really nice, so that's going to be one of my next videos, is how to apply decorative tacks. And then the last part will just be the cushion, and I'm going to do the cushion. I changed my original idea from champagne velvet to just to match the back damask fabric. So we're just going to keep it with continuity here with this chair. I'm going to do some black velvet piping for the cushion as well. So I'll have a video coming up on how to make a box cushion with velvet piping, and I'll show you how to make the piping, and I'll show you how to make the velvet bias tape for the decorative tacks as well. So thank you for watching this tutorial on how to upholster this channel back chair, and yeah, stay tuned for my next videos coming up, which is just all the finishing stuff, and then you'll get to see the finished product. And it's been an amazing process, and you guys are awesome for hanging out with me, so I appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more stuff. I'm going to eventually do a lamp video and some other stuff on how I make lampshades, and make lots of stuff, so keep checking in to see what my next video is.